pounding there.
All right. Well,
going live.
We'll go with we'll do it on the fly. Welcome everybody to another Tree Seeking edition, Saturday edition. We're both got a little tied up earlier in the week, so Jay was available today, so we sit down to talk about AI data centers today. Jay, how's it been going? What have you been up to, man?
Life's good. I was at a surprise birthday party for a friend, and great outpouring of good times and great emotions. So happy birthday to my friend. I won't say her name, protect her privacy, but it's been good. And I've been working on getting my own personal cloud storage up and running. And this I think gets into a theme that we talked about before the show. It's a thesis I'm working on called hyper independence, and where people can control as many aspects of their own lives as they possibly can. It doesn't just have to be about data or the cyber world, but I think enough people are starting to realize that there's technology out there, and I'm trying to tap into that. And one of the things is creating my own cloud solution for file hosting. And I don't want to pay for OneDrive. I don't want to pay for Dropbox. I don't want them looking into my data. And I'm slowly doing that and actually encrypting all my hard drives and moving that over into a Linux environment, which is also encrypted. So that's something I've been really pursuing the past few weeks. It's been very, very gratifying to do that, and I'm making steady progress.
So when you talk cloud storage, is like how like are you're using a service for cloud storage or
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to move my camera just real quick so everyone can see it. If you look basically right there, it's hard to see. I have the lap. There's a laptop right on there that have the lid down, and that is my server basically, and that's worked out nicely. So then I'm slowly migrating some of my external hard drives, which keep my personal data, and I'm encrypting those, and I'm slowly pushing them over to that Linux environment right there. And the point is that everything is in a separate environment. It's basically a server at this point. All the data will be encrypted, and then I actually have my own personal virtual private network where I can access that data not only from my desktop, and I'm on right now, but from my phone. I can actually access that data right there. And so I'm not dependent upon a service. I'm not dependent upon paying for anything. That laptop was $75. Since it's running Linux, it just sips power. It doesn't chew up a lot of power the way Windows does. And the good thing about that is that I'm actually repurposing a ton of equipment. The only thing that I bought that's new was that laptop, and that was a used laptop for $75. And everything's set up, and I actually went through one of the LLMs to take me through how to do the steps, and it was pretty straightforward. It did a really good job of just stepping me through it, and things are going well. So I'm not dependent upon anyone else's virtual environment. I'm not dependent on anyone else's hardware. I'm not dependent on anyone else's code, and I'm using open source software. Stuff that's just commonly available, and I think that it does take some doing, but I think eventually someone will step into the market and create a product which will help people bring back their own data, take control of their own data in some way, shape, or form. And I think that this is a hand in glove topic with regards to today's topic of data centers. And I think I didn't quite understand what your original intent was of bringing this up, but I think you did some good research on data centers, and I think your concerns are valid around some of the environmental problems that we're seeing, the potential for excessive centralization that we're seeing in regards to the ownership of the equipment, ownership of the power, ownership of the water, and then ownership of the data. So I think this goes hand in hand, and I think that that, one thing you mentioned right before the show was, potential solution is people start taking control of their own environments, home solutions. And I'm doing that kind of my own little way.
Yeah, that's excellent move. I think that's the key to all this is while we look through some of this information that we'll be presenting during the show today, I think the takeaway that I've had is that AI is out there. It can be used as a tool. Many people are using it as such, and there seems to be maybe a little bit of AI fatigue as well.
Yeah.
I think some people were getting a little burnt out on just seeing all this AI slop out everywhere, as the kids like to say, and that it is getting a little wearing on us. And I think there probably is more, maybe a demand, or will be more of a demand for real things as well because of all this that's being generated. And that, yeah, like you were saying, I think maybe a central theme to take away from all this information is that there are the tech billionaires and folks working on this, and it's really centralizing all this technology. So
yeah,
I guess the theme that will probably I hope people take away from this is kind of the theme of centralization versus decentralization, and how decentralization works to the benefit of the common people, the people that aren't up in the upper echelons. And it puts that power in your hands instead of somebody else kind of holding the technology over you. Where you're sitting under some kind of subscription plan or something like that. But yeah, we'll flesh that out more as we go along. The first thing I wanted to present tonight, this was the first article in the series that I've looked for. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Let's shift over to this guy right here. So this one I found interesting. The headline says Pope sounds alarm on AI slavery while church aligns with the lefty Anthropic. So it's kind of interesting that the Pope in this, he's saying that he is kind of like talking about he's kind of bad mouthing AI, but then at the end he comes in and kind of praises Anthropic for some reason, so which is kind of strange. So he quotes here: "If technology promises emancipation yet produces new forms of global subordination, it stands in contradiction to the fundamental principle of human dignity." The pontiff explained in the encyclical, while urging governments to regulate private companies driving AI advances and warning that the pursuit of profit cannot justify mass job losses. The pontiff called for retraining and protections for working class folks threatened by AI-related jobs, stronger education to help students understand AI risks, and safeguards against violent, sexualized, or AI-generated content targeting children. His strongest warning came on the military use of AI. Leo said AI risks making life and death decisions faster, more impersonal, and easier to justify, especially as cyber attacks, influence campaigns, AI kill chains, and hybrid warfare blur the line between defense and aggression. At the event earlier today, where the pontiff unveiled the encyclical, attendees included prominent cardinals and theologians, as well as Christopher Olah, co-founder of the left-leaning AI startup Anthropic, who leads its interpretability team. The Pope said the church and Anthropic will cooperate to find a path for humanity in the age of artificial intelligence. So kind of strange that, know if definitely the Catholics around the world do give some credence to what the Pope talks about. But it's strange to see that he's laying out all these dangers here, but then he's like, oh yeah, but we'll be cool with these one guys, this
Right.
Anthropic team. So
Yeah, it makes you wonder what happened on the back end, like behind closed doors, that all of a sudden he's giving his blessings to that one particular AI organization.
Yeah, it's a little strange. So that's one little article there for we got religious institutions and with the Vatican coming in giving perspective on this. The next one comes from that article is from Zero Hedge. This next one comes from Activist Post, and this one is getting into we got Larry Ellison and Oracle. Headline is Oracle and the rise of the AI surveillance state under Trump. So yeah, this is a pretty long article and gets into a lot of the stuff that Oracle has got their hands in as far as all the databases of the government.
Mm-hmm.
So let me scroll through here for a second and see if I can remember some of the relevant points in here. This is a good article to go check out and read the whole way through, but let me get in here. So we'll start here. The heads of numerous AI and technology companies gathered at the White House to sign the so-called Ratepayer Protection Pledge, aimed at keeping costs of these new AI data centers from impacting American companies involved, including Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, xAI, and of course, Oracle. Under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers, and that would mean prices for American communities will not go up, but in many cases will actually come down, Trump said in a press release for the pledge. Oracle stated that it's committed to paying our own way on energy, hiring locally, protecting water resources, and enriching communities across the country. The mention of protecting water sources comes as a growing number of communities opposing data centers due to strains on local water supplies. While this pledge, if maintained, is a net positive for Americans concerned about rising costs related to everything to ever increasing construction of data centers, it is yet another example of industry and government assuming that Americans actually want more data centers. There has been little to no public consultation or comment period for the construction of these facilities, just another push to the technocratic state where AI is ubiquitous. So going on to say, March 20th, Trump releases a national policy framework for artificial intelligence. Building on this momentum, the Trump White House released a set of legislative recommendations outlining their proposed approach to federal regulation of AI. The document covers 7 areas, including child safety, community protections, intellectual property, free speech, innovation, workforce development, and preemption of state AI laws. While the document is not binding, it signals that Trump wants Congress to enact the 2 most concerning parts of the framework related parental controls for AI and the preemption of state laws. The section on parental controls explicitly states Congress should establish commercially reasonable protective age assurance requirements, such as parental attestation for AI platforms and services likely to be accessed by minors. While there are methods for verifying users' age, which do not require biometrics, there is a growing concern that AI verification using biometrics, face scans typically, will become the norm for accessing internet and downloading apps as governments in the UK and Australia press companies to implement such measures. Could the call for protecting children be another gateway for a long feared internet ID, which allows governments and big tech firms to control access to the internet itself? Time will tell. Regarding the preempting of states' rights to pass laws regulating AI, the framework states Congress should preempt state AI laws that impose undue burdens to ensure a minimally burdensome national standard consistent with these recommendations, not 50 discordant ones. States should not be permitted to regulate AI development because it is inherently interstate phenomenon with key foreign policy and national security implications. That seems a little dangerous to me. So let's see. Trump's national policy framework for artificial intelligence document was developed by Office and Science of Technology Policy Director Michael Kratsisos and White House Special Advisor for AI and Crypto, David Sachs. Within days of the framework announcement, Sachs confirmed that he was no longer serving as czar. Sachs and Kratsisos will now co-chair Trump's newly announced Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Kratsisos and Sachs are deeply concerned to connected to Peter Thiel, Bilderberg's steering chair and co-founder of Palantir. Kratsisos himself attended the 2025 Bilderberg meeting in Stockholm, Sweden. Curiously, while Bilderberg Group typically meets in June, the group is slated to meet in Washington, D.C. this weekend. And details on whether Kratsisos or other Trump cabinet members will attend have not been released. So, you know, rubbing elbows with the guys at the Bilderberg committee. There is one of the guys sitting on this committee here. Other members of PCAST include Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, Oracle Executive Vice Chair Safra Katz, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Andreessen Horowitz co-founder Mark Andreessen, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, and Dell Technologies Chairman and CEO Michael Dell. The fact that Trump is appointing billionaire technocrats who are aligned with Peter Thiel and in some cases influenced by Curtis Yarvin should tell you that the Council of Advisors will continue to promote policies which increase the financial bottom line for their companies, but also expand the technocratic surveillance state. Says on March 23rd, Oracle announces multiple AI deals with the Trump administration. On this day, the company made several announcements relating to AI partnerships with the U.S. government. These include Oracle's AI-powered financials help federal agencies modernize operations and advance mission outcomes, and Oracle empowers defense industrial base to innovate at scale with new isolated cloud. While these headlines are relevant to overall expansion of the hand-in-glove relationship between Oracle and the U.S. government, two other announcements made on the same day deserve our full attention. First, Oracle unveils AI data platform for U.S. federal government. With this announcement, Oracle is giving federal agencies a single secure foundation to unify and accelerate mission-driven AI capabilities. This means federal agencies from the U.S. government will rely on Oracle cloud infrastructure to reduce information silos and make informed mission-critical decisions at scale. The U.S. government will also have access to Oracle's autonomous AI database and OCI Enterprise AI. In another press release from the same day, Oracle announced that Oracle expands AI infrastructure options for U.S. government customers. This announcement makes it clear that U.S. government will also have access to the use of Elon Musk's XAI, Grok, and NVIDIA Nemotron AI models to further streamline completing tasks and streamlining data sharing. While the press release focused on efforts increase the speed of communications between agencies and summarize data across various agencies, the idea of having the U.S. government relying on a single AI platform to unify Americans' data should send shivers down your spine. Can we really trust this company to hold our data and keep it private? I would say no, especially after Oracle was forced to pay $115 million in July 2024 to settle a lawsuit accusing the company of invading people's privacy by collecting their personal information and selling it to third parties. Specifically, Oracle was building digital dossiers which contained information on what websites people visited, where they banked, purchased gas, went to dinner, shopped, and used their credit cards. This data was then being sold to third-party marketing firms. While the actions of Oracle as a company are worrisome enough, they are more concerning when you understand the history of Oracle and co-founder Larry Ellison. The Oracle U.S. government nexus. This goes way back. Larry Ellison is currently the sixth richest person in the world after briefly dethroning Elon Musk as the richest person on the planet. Ellison supported Trump's presidential campaigns, advised him during COVID-19 panic, and joined Trump in announcing the aforementioned $500 billion Stargate project. Ellison's company is known for having deep ties with the U.S. government, including the CIA. In fact, the CIA was Oracle's first customer, and the company even takes its name from a CIA project codenamed Oracle. Oracle wouldn't exist if there wasn't government contracts. Mike Wilson, author of the book, The Difference Between God and Larry Ellison, told San Francisco Gate in 2002. The report notes that after 9/11 attacks, Oracle began pitching the idea of a national ID card to thwart terrorists and called for local governments to create detailed digital maps. In January 2002, Ellison published an op-ed in the New York Times calling for the digital ID to prevent terrorism. A national security database combined with biometrics, thumbprints, handprints, iris scans, or whatever is best can be used to detect people's false identities, he wrote. Oracle has a history of lobbying both Democrats and Republicans, as well as employing ex-CIA agents in their lobbying efforts. Oracle has 1,000 sales and consulting workers focused exclusively on government work, and in the wake of September 11th, Oracle is counting on the heightened interests of staving off terrorism to boost its government ties even more. San Francisco Chronicle reported only 8 months after the 9/11 attack. In September 2024, Ellison generated controversy with his statements regarding using AI to keep the populace on their best behavior. During an hour-long QA at Oracle's 2024 financial analyst meeting, Ellison starts out by describing how AI could be used to potentially prevent school shootings. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. Oh, man. What did I do there? I just lost it. Back in September 2024, during Oracle Q&A, Ellison spoke about AI and cameras surveilling our every move, recording at all times. Ultimately, what he describes eerily like a technocratic tyranny where privacy and liberty are a relic of the past. Ellison has also maintained a cozy relationship with Peter Thiel. Oracle and Palantir partnered together for cloud and AI infrastructure in 2024, and Ellison and Thiel have been in Trump's inner circle since at least 2018. This is why the fact both Oracle and Palantir have seen record profits from U.S. government with the U.S. government and military under Trump should come as no surprise. Unfortunately, the merging of U.S. government with big tech firms like Palantir and Oracle is just one more step in the completion of a technocratic Trump administration. So this is, one of the articles that kind of shows how there may be ulterior motives for, these big AI data centers is to, collect and collate a lot of this data, where they've been collecting this data for a long time, but, using these AI kind of hubs, let's say, where they're connecting all these various databases that they're going to be able to use that to just tighten the surveillance, basically. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that one?
So I do think it's a little bit biased. I do think there are legitimate concerns, but I think there were some, I'm going to say, um, some bad narrative creation there. So, he says there was a term, it was near the beginning of the article saying something like nobody asked for these data centers. Well, nobody ever asked for data centers. I've never seen a person say, oh, I need a data center, right? But the free market is saying that they need data centers. When people have subscriptions to AI, these large LLMs, when companies are using them and they ask their employees, hey, you need to start using this to increase your productivity, then the market is saying, yeah, we want these LLMs, and by default, they got to run somewhere, So I think that this is kind of not really good faith narrative. Another thing in the one with the Pope, he said, or I don't know if it was the Pope or the article you're also just reading near the beginning, something along the lines of states should not have the ability to have a hand in AI development. Is that right?
Yeah, here's the quote. It's states should not be permitted to regulate AI development because it is inherently interstate phenomenon with key foreign policy and national security implications.
So I do agree that it is interstate, so therefore it's federal and falls under the Commerce Clause. But more importantly, it's free speech. I don't see how in the same way that no both physically, in actuality and morally, no nation can actually get in the way of Bitcoin because it's free speech. It's open source code. I have a huge problem with anyone who thinks that states should be able to regulate AI development. Because where do we stop? Because AI is just code, right? And neurological weights, and where do we stop with that? Does that mean that, for example, California, they've been pushing for this whole concept of age verification through the major operating systems, Windows, iOS, and Linux. Does that mean that the states would be able to exercise control over that sort of thing? So I don't have a problem with the concerns. I have a problem with, I think, bad faith framing.
I can see, if I think probably the big thing for me would be like trying to say that there's no way that you could sue some of these companies or whatever if they're doing like actual harm in your local area or whatever, so that
Sure.
there's like literally no way to put them in check.
Well, okay, but that's a different thing to say. There's one thing to say that you can regulate them, but another thing to say, you can't bring up a suit. Anyone can sue anything over anyone. Anyone can sue anyone else for anything, right? That's a constitutional right that we have, right? But to be able to say that they should be able to regulate, first off, I'm giving you my bias for just a minute. All regulations, in my humble opinion, need to be abolished. If we want to have these organizations fall under the rubric of rules, then fine, pass legislation that has to go through the parliamentary process. But the moment we start putting things under the heading of regulation, then we have unnamed bureaucrats being able to dictate what these companies may not and must or shall do. I have a huge problem with that. And the founding fathers are pretty explicit about this, is that the many states should have the right to exert states' rights for sure, but they also did draw a line that you can't have all these different rules in regards to certain things, such as on which side of the road do we drive, right? What form of money do we use? And we can't have half the states driving on the left side and the other half driving on the right side, things like that. So, where do we draw that line? And does that mean that some states can compel a company, you must do something, and another state may say you may not do that thing? And so I think that this gets into the whole concept of states' rights and federalism.
Yeah, it does, because that the original idea was kind of to allow the states to be able to operate and make their own decisions, but then they brought in that commerce clause or whatever to regulate commerce and made it to where that trumped the states' ability to kind of be self-determining.
So I want to maybe, and I know for the audience it may seem like we're going like a weird depth in here, but I think it does tie back to the core issue here. So in terms of the Commerce Clause, I think that was really meant for a very specific and limited area. And unfortunately, the federal government and the Supreme Court really opened that up way too far beyond what the Founding Fathers intended. If we just take a look at the Supreme Court case of Wickard v. Filburn, and I think this was decided in 1943, and this basically said that it didn't matter if a farmer was engaging in commerce entirely within his own state. That farmer choosing not to sell products on the open market was still affecting the market. And so it really kind of that was the camel's nose under the tent that gave the federal government the ability to kind of begin to trample on states' rights. And even though there were no transactions that were happening in interstate, and thus didn't really fall under interstate commerce clause. And there were a slew of different Supreme Court cases that were decided, and this really ties back to FDR's New Deal, kind of regime that happened there, and really extending the Great Depression. And so, if we take a look at cases like Wickard v. Filburn, we have federalism bumping up against states' rights, and then the Supreme Court did it basically through case law, just deciding, well, we can get rid of the original intent of the Commerce Clause and just say, okay, we're going to inject ourselves in your business. And there's a whole philosophical aspect of this. By you not doing something, that affects me. It's one thing if I do something and it affects someone else. If I don't do something, then I'm somehow morally obligated anyway, and I have a huge problem with that. And so I think that the reason why I'm saying this is because I think what the federal government did and the Supreme Court did went far beyond the original scope of the Commerce Clause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an interesting case.
You got the Wickard v. Filburn?
Yeah, I have it pulled up here.
I think it was a case of, was it Nebraska? And it was a farmer versus the Commerce Secretary. Is that right?
It says Ohio farmer growing wheat to feed animals on his own farm.
Yep.
And then the U.S. government had established limits on wheat production based on the acreage owned by the farmer to stabilize wheat prices and supplies. He grew more than was permitted and so was ordered to pay a penalty. In response, he said that because his wheat was not sold, it could not be regulated as commerce, let alone interstate commerce, described in the Constitution as commerce among the several states. And the Supreme Court disagreed whether the subject of the regulation in question was production, consumption, or marketing is therefore not material for purposes of deciding the questions of federal power before us. But even if the appellee's activities be local, and though it may not be regarded as commerce, it may still, whatever its nature, be reached by Congress if it exerts a substantial economic effect on interstate commerce, and this irrespective of whether such effect is what might at some earlier time have been defined as direct or indirect. I don't know. That's kind of some wizard language there.
Yeah, they're really threading the needle here, you know.
Yeah.
And this is why I keep going back to that whole idea of that philosophical aspect of you doing something that affects me. Okay, we can talk about it. You doing something that doesn't, or me, you not engaging in commerce somehow affects me, you know, and therefore the government can come in and basically compel you as an individual to do something. And if you think about it, this kind of goes back to Obamacare, you know, the so-called Affordability Act, right? And that the government can compel people to buy products and services that they may not necessarily want nor can afford.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of it seems like a bad precedent, you know.
Yeah, and this happened basically 84 years ago, right? You know, I have a huge problem. So look, I don't think it should have been decided that way at all. The federal government really overstepped. The Supreme Court overstepped, right? But you know, if I had to choose, if someone's going to force me to say, okay, well, you have to put it in. Okay, fine, put it during times of war. But then, as soon as the war's over, that's it. That is no longer the case. It shouldn't be there at all. But if someone's going to say, well, you have to have it, then fine, you have it for that specific period. You know, and I think that's what they were trying to do, is have stable wheat prices for the war effort. You know, we had just entered war, so that was what, October 42. So it would have been 10 months prior to. You know, so the war machine was ramping up. You know, and you know, here's the thing about it is this was, as far as I understand, he was not some massive, you know, like Cargill, you know, or Tyson Meats, you know, sort of farmer, right? JLB or JBL, you know, sort of farmer. He was just a regular farmer, and yet somehow the federal government can tell them. So the point of all this is that I think that this, you know, to bring it back to AI, you know, I think that this is going to be an age-old argument, you know, between federalism and states' rights, and what is federalism? How far can the federal government regulate this sort of thing, or to make regular, you know, to use the archaic term. And you know, it's one thing to say we all have to drive on the right side of the road. It's another thing to say, well, we all have to use dollars to pay our taxes. You know, we're obligated to do that, or states cannot regulate speech, and I think that's what some states would like to do.
Yeah, regardless of all that, I mean, I think people need to be aware of what's going on around them locally, and then act as local as possible to, you know, make things, you know, put government in check locally as effectively as you can, so that, you know, your local area, you're making sure that you're keeping eyes on what the government is doing in your local area.
Yep, I agree with that.
So Trump recently traveled to China for this kind of Beijing summit. He went there to with a delegation of 18 of America's most powerful corporate executives, including Elon Musk, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, aboard Air Force One to negotiate the future of the AI supply chain with Xi Jinping's government. State Department calls it Pax Silica, a U.S.-led AI and supply chain framework built around secure technology supply chains, economic security, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, semiconductors, energy, manufacturing infrastructure, and trustworthy systems. The declaration signed in Washington on December 12, 2025, described the objective as building secure, prosperous, and innovative global technology supply chains. I just think it's kind of interesting where it seems like there's a lot of talk about how China is the bad guy and like we've got to outcompete China and all this stuff, and then they're going over there, I guess, making some kind of deal on this. Like, it was just kind of interesting that that's going on. Maybe they just need a new boogeyman.
They need to what?
They just need a new boogeyman to sell fear. Maybe they're all just kind of working together.
I do think China's the bad guy here, no doubt about it. They have said that they want to crush us. They're pretty public about it. And the way that they act is in bad faith. They've been acting in bad faith for basically for over 3 decades now. One thing that they do is if there's a foreign company that goes in there into China, they want access to the markets, the Chinese government, CCP, will tell that company, you have to divulge your technological proprietary information to us in order to be in this market. They engage in a lot of industrial espionage, military espionage, and especially in the United States. They have an entire building that's dedicated just to cyber warfare against our military. And it's malicious. It's definitely malicious. While obviously, all the major nation state players are engaging in cyber warfare, some level, it's not like China. They are really, really active in this. And they're constantly pushing in these areas. And they have no problems with doing things such as withholding rare earth metals from us. So I think they are the boogeyman, the legitimate boogeyman.
Well, I do think that they're kind of the model that I think for the kind of technocratic state, like because of all their surveillance and everything that they have rolled out there, that they're kind of the model. If we go back into the past and we look at kind of like the rise of China, there was a lot of investment to build their infrastructure over there in the beginning, and then I think maybe Kissinger or somebody made some deals with them back in the day.
Gave them, I think, most favored nation trading status, which is why do they get that? He's just trying to kiss butt, and they've retained that status for so long. For what reason? I can understand if this were the 70s and China were a third world nation, that and their people were starving, but it hasn't been like that for 3 decades.
Right. So, and then it's always the governments, man. Like,
yeah, I agree.
It's like, the Chinese people, like they just want to do what's best for them and their families and have good lives. It's just, a lot of it's the governments and what they do and their monopoly on force across the world that puts everybody into a bad state.
I agree. That is consistently the anti-Midas touch that the vast majority of governments throughout human history, that's what they engage in. Pretty much everything they touch turns to poop.
Yep. All right. So the next article that I have comes from the Next Big Future, and it's kind of laying out how all these different data centers, the money that it's costing to build these data centers, and then how it seems that AI is building them cheaper and faster than a lot of them. And it just kind of goes through a bunch of data on the speed and the costs for some of these data centers. So we'll go into part of the article here. It says data center project cancellations more than quadrupled to 25 in 2025 from 6 in 2024. Between a third and a half of all U.S. data centers planned for 2026 are likely to be delayed or totally canceled. Bloomberg reports amid ongoing supply chain challenges and campus location concerns, the original plan might have been 4 years, but it could now be longer or never. There is an estimated 12 to 16 gigawatts of planned capacity in 2026. Only 5 gigawatts is currently under construction, and many projects remain having been announced, but with no physical progress yet. Of the 5 gigawatt, XAI is 1 to 2 gigawatt under actual construction or completed. OpenAI's $500 billion Stargate project has been stalled, downsized or delayed from the original 4-year timeline. Amazon AI revenue run late last quarter was $15 billion per year. XAI matched the $15 billion per year with the Anthropic deal. If XAI were to rent out the rest of Colossus 2, that would be another 15 to 20 billion per year. Cloud computing margins have been great and have been the envy of other businesses. Traditional cloud margins, Amazon Web Services, are stable and high at approximately 35% operating margins. Bitcoin mining margins are volatile and compressed, often break even or negative in 2025 and 26. And AI cloud margins, CoreWeave, SpaceX AI, Amazon AI offer highest unit economics with approximately 75% gross and 60% EBI TDA margins. I'm not sure what that means, despite heavy growth capex. Competitors are still waiting for permits, pouring concrete, and waiting on transformers. Says XAI pays itself off in 12 months instead of 3 to 5 years. AI multi-year demand stays insatiable. XAI capture it first, build faster, rent sooner, kick ass. XAI recycles tens of billions into the next project 1 to 3 years earlier. XAI is compounding returns, while others are still in risky construction. Risk reduction is from shorter exposure to technology obsolescence, energy price volatility, regulatory delays, or demand shifts. 4-year build window carries far more execution and market risk. So, yeah, it's just kind of showing that, X seems to be moving quicker and faster on building these things. This was kind of an interesting graph or infographic to kind of show percent of the stock market of the companies on the stock market.
Yeah.
The top ones over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're mostly the big tech companies.
Yep.
And pharmaceutical. So.
Yeah, we talk about the FANGs, right? Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, NVIDIA, Google, and there was one more, I think. You can find your top 6 or 7, right? And it's interesting, take just a quick sidebar. We take a look at the S&P 500. You can really split it up into the S&P 6 and the S&P 494, right? With those top 6, which I think are the FANGs, are the ones that are really driving so much of that growth with the S&P 500. And this was as of about 3 years ago. And the 494, S&P 494, really had lackluster growth. So it's interesting to see how the S&P 500 has become so in my humble opinion, so overweighted with those stocks, and it's become an issue in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like they're going gangbusters on all this, and just the idea for this topic and this talk, it's just that they've been building these things like crazy, these data centers, and it's just popped up in everybody's consciousness that whoa, we're building all these things, but to me it was like, okay, so we're building all this stuff, but at what cost? What's the cost of allocating all your resources into this thing while we have crumbling infrastructure? We're off fighting in Iran, we're doing all this sending funds to all these countries. It's just like, is it just gonna be everybody living in a crumbling virtual world, I guess, because everything's crumbled all around you and you just have just the internet and AI dominating everything. It's just where are we moving towards?
Yeah.
What are we moving towards? So hey, you got a fan here, had to pop in, taking off.
Hey Mark, what's going on, bud?
What's up, Mark? But yeah, so I was just highlighting that, just kind of see what the money they're spending on all this is, and where that's going. Next up, I have a video on some of the current backlash from the public on these data centers. So let me pull that up here. Let me look at the timestamp I need to pull up too. It is 2:33 to 2:34. All right. 2:33. This guy right here. Just a second while I pull this up here. This one comes from the Grand Theft World podcast. And we'll catch a little bit of this video, have a discussion.
Yes, it's creating this combustible situation that we've seen throughout history through different industrial and technical revolutions. But this time, the difference is that industry itself has created this story where they're basically the villains. The AI CEOs are the villains. So they're saying we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to get rich doing it. We're going to go on every talk show and say your jobs are dead, and you need to let us build data centers in your backyard. And investors are rewarding them for it, saying, here's an unprecedented amount of capital that you can invest in building all this stuff out. Again, whether anybody wants it or not.
An absolutely stunning revelation of just how many stock trades Trump has made while serving as president of the United States. Let's put this up on the screen. Trump discloses.
All right. Well, yeah. So that little clip was just talking about, some of the backlash that the public is having from, all these guys saying, talking about how AI is going to be taking everybody's jobs, and well, we're going to be building them, so everybody's a little pissed off. I believe that the guy speaking there wrote this book that it's called Blood in the Machine, and the origins of the rebellion against big tech, and he kind of goes over the historic Luddite movement from back in the day during industrialization, and kind of shows how the this sentiment of this growing technology and the displacement of jobs will, you know, one of the historic movements that, you know, went against the industrialization and some of the actions that they took is a way to like kind of be something to learn from going into the future, and you know, comparing that to our modern age. So I'll just read you the snippet from this. The most urgent story in modern tech begins not in Silicon Valley, but 200 years ago in rural England, when workers known as the Luddites rose up rather than starve at the hands of factory owners who were using automated machines to erase their livelihoods. The Luddites organized guerrilla raids and smashed those machines on punishment of death, and won the support of Lord Byron, enraged the Prince Regent, and inspired the birth of science fiction. This all but forgotten class struggle brought 19th century England to its knees. Today, technology imperils millions of jobs. Robots are crowding factory floors. Artificial intelligence will soon pervade every aspect of our economy. How will this change the way we live, and what can we do about it? The answers lie in Blood in the Machine. Brian Merchant intertwines a lucid examination of our current age with the story of the Luddites, showing how automation changed our world and is shaping our future. So yeah, there's a rising sentiment among people where all these, you know, billionaires are talking about how, and these tech giants are talking about how AI is going to be coming in and replacing everybody's jobs. So, you know, there's a little bit of a boiling point going on in the population of people, you know, not wanting to have their jobs taken over. So something I wanted to highlight there.
Yeah, the Ned Ludd movement, that was interesting to see that happen. And you know, the funny thing about it is none of the prophesized cataclysms that were prophesied at the time, none of those ever came true. And yet people love to talk about, you know, the Luddite movement, the anti-technological movement. You know, and it's just kind of funny to see this. I am curious to read the book to see, you know, what analysis he has. And this kind of gets into the whole aspect of who was it? Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, Soylent Green, which was Charlton Heston's movie about the overpopulation of the planet. You know, none of that stuff ever came true, and yet, you know, people love to talk about that. And that's right up there with Silent Spring. You know, the usage of DDT and things like that. So it's interesting to see this sort of thing, and you know, I'm very sympathetic to people who are losing their jobs. It just sucks. But this really gets into Schumpeter's whole concept of creative destruction, and you know, the whole idea that you know, people on the one hand, and this is something that I would tell my clients when I was a consultant, and they want to bring in new systems like Oracle or SAP, is every person or 95% of the people in the company want everything around them to change, but they don't want to change. You know, I want all the processes around me to change, but I don't want my tasks, my day-to-day to have to change at all. You know, and same thing. I want, you know, technology to come in and make my life easier. But I don't want there to be any disruption of my life at all. And don't get me wrong. I mean, emotionally, I get it. That it makes sense emotionally. But I think where I have the problem is, you know, where the Luddites, you know, they actually went in as the book actually pointed out, and they were at pain of death, they were destroying, you know, someone else's property. You know, I have a huge problem with that. And I think the only difference between the Luddites of 18th century England and today is they just changed the tools that the Luddites use. Now, whereas before it was matches and hammers. Now it's laws, regulations, rules, and ordinances.
And I think the more effective strategy, if we don't want, this kind of centralized, like I said in the beginning, and we've been kind of talking about, is this whole idea of these centralized data centers versus the individual and decentralized systems. So I think, the better way to handle this, like you said earlier, is that the market is demanding this. Well, if we keep buying the products and we keep consuming, these centralized AI systems, then we are asking for more of them, right? By spending our money on those centralized systems. So, I think the better solution would be to, figure out how you can use it, but how you can use it locally, and not get caught up in using all these subscriptions for all these AI models and all that. In that regard, I do have another video queued up. This one comes from an economist that was recently on Tucker Carlson, and Richard A. Werner is the economist, and he gave a really good synopsis of what is happening in the financial system, and then he wrapped it up in the end and brought it into what's happening with AI and how that could be tied in with some kind of digital money, and and the risks of that, and his overall theme in studying economics and looking into the history of some things was that he gave Prussia as an example. Prussia developed pretty rapidly because they put a lot of the decision making in the controls of local people, and even in their military groups, the commands were kind of left toward the individual units to come up with their strategies. So they were able to be more nimble, and their society flourished pretty quickly for a time there. So it's a really good interview to watch all the way through. I have the last couple minutes highlighted here to share with everybody in relation to the topic. But yeah, if you have the time, it's a couple hour interview. Play it on in the background while you're doing something, and it's a really good one to kind of lay out and understand how we got to this point, specifically in the financial system. Jay has done a really good job at kind of pointing that out in the past on this live stream. And this guy kind of has been really close to the financial system for a while. So he's got some good insights on if you want a historical context of all that as well. So I'll play a snippet here about 2 hours and 2 minutes in. And then I'll play it till the end of the video for good context on this topic. So here we go.
Currency. Now, digital currency as such is not a bad thing, because for half a century we've been using bank digital currency, BDC we could call it.
Yeah.
Because the banking system has been digital, and most money is created by banks. It's digital money. We have been using decentralized bank digital money, and actually has worked quite well. And the banks have never sold our personal transactions data to anyone. So actually we should laud the banks, because the new regime is all about, our information about our transactions being sold freely.
The government is now Facebook.
And yes,
exactly.
Being used to manipulate us, whether it's in elections or to sell products and services that we don't really need. So it's going to be a digital currency. It is marketed as CBDC, central bank digital currency. I call it central bank digital control. because that's what it is. It's not really a currency. It's more control, as Catherine Austin Fitts always points out quite correctly. And so, because we've been using BDC, bank digital currency, what is the difference? It's the central. They tell us as justification, Christine Lagarde, that we need this because there's Bitcoin, we need digital central bank currency now as well. Well, the digital is not the new aspect. We have digital money. It's the central aspect that this is about. Because, and particularly if there's now another bout of inflation, and in some countries with the boom-bust cycles being arranged such that in Germany we're in a property bust now. There was the bubble arranged by the ECB from 2009 to 2022. Now property prices are steadily declining, putting banks slowly under more and more pressure. They were forced to do this by the ECB. It's the same game as Bank of Japan's game, in Japan. And so banking crisis, of course, is ideal, and inflation to launch your CBDC. That's for Europe. In other countries, there may be slightly other rationales and justifications for introducing it. But a crisis, one way or another, is always good. A war, of course, is even better, because then it's just wartime direct diktats. You can't do anything. It's wartime. You have to accept whatever you're told. And as a wartime measure, of course, that's the ultimate. If everything else fails, then definitely wartime measures would be used to introduce these measures. So we're heading towards digital control systems where we have no more control over our liquid assets. It will be, of course, programmable, permission-based. So only what the central planners allow you to use your money for, at what time and place and location will be permitted. And if you're in the wrong place, it's not going to work. And if you're buying the wrong book title, it's not going to work, and so on. I mean, there's no limit to how much you can fine tune and control. Oh, but they don't have so much power. They can't control, millions of people. Well, this is what the drive to build all these hundreds, in fact, thousands of data centers is about. It is an organizational challenge to micromanage the world's population through the new financial world order. Yes, but they're working on solving that. AI is really about that. If AI was about helping us to be more productive, the principle of decentralization would be applied, because any human organization and anything where humans are involved, if you introduce the principle of decentralization, subsidiarity, it will be more productive, no doubt, more efficient, more productive. That's been demonstrated in many contexts. I mentioned the warfare, military, but and businesses and so on. It's true for everything. But that's not what they're doing. They're creating highly centralized structures, which proves that it's not about actual productivity. It's about controlling us. That's why they need these huge resources. Then you can control inflation easily, because people can't buy when the central banks don't allow you to buy.
Yes.
So then prices can't be driven up. And also you control movement of people. You can't buy a ticket. You can't go here and there because your money won't work outside a certain zone, whether it's 15-minute prison zone or whatever it may be. It is the totalitarian dictator's dream come true. And that is the scary thing. Most people are still not aware that we are so close to the scariest, most dystopian system, where we're giving so much control and power into the hands of ever fewer people over our lives and billions of people. Again, if everyone is good, like the majority of people, and the controllers, the elites, the central planners are good, it's not an issue. But that's not what human history teaches us. And human nature, we know, is different. Most people actually, once they're given a lot of power, that comes with temptations of power, and most can't handle those temptations, and they give in, and then that's when power gets abused. That's why Lord Acton, a British political observer and advisor to prime ministers, concluded power corrupts. Most people get corrupted by power. They can't handle power. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. We're talking about absolute power in the hands of central planners if we allow the central bank digital currency to be imposed. And the central planners will have this absolute power, including, of course, they have already monetary power, but they will have the tools to deploy this in every detail to micromanage us. That is a new dimension of power, and effectively includes fiscal policy, because ultimately everything becomes controlled by the central bank. So now you could still say, well, we have some politicians, they meet for parliamentary votes and they decide budgets. Well, all that will become obsolete because everything will be controlled by the central bank. This is what the politicians don't realize, that the central bank digital currency is the first step, but the central planners, the monetary central planners, to take over everything. So the dangers are just so manifold that it's quite clear that we have to stop this. So, I mean, this is really the big scenario, and that's where we see forces pushing as internationally power gets ever more centralized. Despite this being the biggest lesson of the 20th century, this is not a good idea to constantly have more power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. This is actually being accelerated in the 21st century.
On the basis of lies about the 20th century.
Indeed, yeah.
Richard, thank you. And I hope this won't be your last trip here.
It'd be a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope I can come again. I mean, there's
literally.
Okay, so yeah, that was the thesis, wrapping up this big conversation that they had about the financial system, and kind of where he sees it heading is into this, control, mass control, centralized system, especially if they can get their hands on some kind of programmable money. And as we've seen, right, every time that there's a crisis in the financial system, there's some kind of shift, right? There's a shift to some new model where they, we covered last time 1971 when we broke away from the gold, from everything being backed by precious metals, to now we're just basically untethered from any kind of rein in on the central bank's ability to create new currency. So if there's some kind of crisis, well, the looming giant debt bubble that we're in right now, culminating into a collapse of the current system, they're going to have to shift into something else to save it somehow. So that next step could be, the digital programmable money. And, his thesis was that this whole data center application would be a tool for the controllers to use in something, in a scheme like that. So,
this gets back to Rahm Emanuel, who was an advisor to Obama. I think he said in the 2008 election, I could be wrong on this, never let a good crisis go to waste. And obviously it was an evil sentiment. I don't particularly care for Rahm Emanuel, but I think it was a very apt description of how many in government look at crises. It's an opportunity for more government control, more encroachment, more intrusion into our lives, and that's unfortunately that's a consistent theme, that we've been seeing, and this is why, for those who know me, I have my bias towards Bitcoin, and why, I think Bitcoin is the ultimate freedom accelerator, because if we were on a hard money standard, government wouldn't be able to do about 95% of what it's doing today, and for the past 50 years, because they just wouldn't have the funds to spend on all these encroachments. I just gave a talk on the website usdebtclock.org, and one slide I had a listing of the departments that are associated directly with the president. Like Department of Agriculture, Energy, Education, etc. And then I had two links. One was for a Wikipedia page, the other was for an official federal government page that listed all these different departments and offices and centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I went to print it out on the Wikipedia page, and I think it came up to like 36 pages, of ones that they've listed. The federal government page was so big, it was just a search bar. It's like if you want to see something, you have to tell us explicitly what you're looking for, and we'll return all that you're looking for. So yeah, this is massive. And if we have an open source, transparent money, a hard money standard, then government can't do any of this stuff. I do want to correct a couple things that he said, what he was just wrong about. He said that the big banks don't sell our data. They do sell our data, but they sell it to the federal government, and they get quid pro quo on that. So he's wrong about that. And he was trying to put forth a sentiment that basically the federal government doesn't have the control over our monetary system. They do, and basically the large commercial banks are kind of the enforcement arm of the federal government, specifically the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve. And there are countless examples of these large banks acting as the enforcement arm. And in fact, Trump was actually a victim of that. I think he and his family's bank accounts were closed. They said, you got to go somewhere else. So that was an example of them being the enforcement arm. One more thing he talked about is that the banks they have to do with fiscal policy. They don't have anything to do with fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is basically spending. It's the federal government that they have all the spending power, on that. So that he was wrong about that. But I know it seemed like small, but I just want to clear up a couple things on there where he was outright wrong.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean the overall story, I think, if you listen to that podcast, is just like basically the theme of centralization versus decentralization,
Mm-hmm.
and where you want to move towards more decentralization.
Yep.
For that very fact that if there's anybody that gets too much power, they get drunk on that power and they don't use it. They're not, no human being is perfect and has like all the righteous intentions, and that power tends to corrupt people. So,
yep.
So I think the big takeaway from that whole conversation was that, you want to put the technology in the hands of the people and make it as decentralized as possible. Don't concentrate it in the hands of a few people. So,
I could add to what you're saying, because I agree with you, is if it's decentralized, that means every entity has to compete for resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as it stands right now, nation states can throw the weight around in such a way that they don't have to compete, at least in the same way that businesses and individuals, households and families have to compete, and so they don't pay an opportunity cost. They get to put everything up as priority number one, whereas all the other entities and people have to make prioritized lists. And governments, they find a way not to have to follow that.
Right. Okay. So, a little bit ago, we talked about Larry Ellison in that article, talking about how, he wants to surveil us at all times. So here's that clip that came from a Q&A that he did back in 2024. So I'll play this so you can kind of see a little bit of their thinking here, a little bit, at least of what Larry Ellison is talking about.
Absolutely lock down schools so that dramatically reduce the case of anyone being on campus that doesn't belong on campus, and immediately alert. Second someone pulls out a gun, immediately alert. Use AI cameras to immediately recognize that. But we keep everyone off campus that doesn't belong on campus. The police, another thing, body cameras. We completely redesigned body cameras. Our body cameras cost $70. Normal body camera costs, I don't know, $7,000. Our body cameras are simply lenses two lenses attached to your vest, attached to the smartphone that you're wearing. And we actually take the video that the police officer is, by the way, and the camera's always on. You don't turn it on and off. And by the way you turn it on, you can't turn it on. I'm going to the bathroom. Oracle, I need 2 minutes to take a bathroom break, and we'll turn it off. The truth is, we don't really turn it off. What we do is we record it so no one can see it, but no one can get into that recording without a court order. So you get the privacy you requested, but a court order, if you get a court order, we will, judge, can order, I want to look at that, this so-called bathroom break. If there's something comes up, and plus I'm going to lunch with my friends. Oracle, I need an hour for privacy with lunch with my friends. God bless. We won't listen in unless there's a court order. But it's interesting. But we transmit the video back to headquarters. So headquarters and AI is constantly monitoring the video. Remember this terrible case in Memphis where the 5 police officers basically beat to death another citizen in Memphis? Well, that can't happen because it would be on TV at headquarters. Everyone would see it. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. All right, I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras. It's AI that's looking at the camera. No. You can't do this. It would be like a shooting. That's going to be immediately, that's going to be an event that's immediately, an alarm is going to go off. It's going to be, and we're going to have supervision. In other words, every police officer is going to be supervised at all times. And the supervision will, and if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and report it to the appropriate person, whether it's the sheriff or the chief or whomever we need to take control of the situation. We have, same thing. We have drones. We just, if there's something going on in a shopping center, and I'll stop. A drone goes out there, get there way faster than a police car. There's no reason for, by the way, high-speed chases. You shouldn't have high-speed chases between cars. You just have a drone follow the car. I mean, it's very, very simple. And the new generation of autonomous drones. Spotting forest fires. A drone spots the forest fire, and the drone then drops down and looks around to see if there's a human being near that heat plume, and someone else either had an unattended campfire that caught fire, or it's arson. We can detect all of that. That's all done autonomously with AI. All of these are AI applications, and so you think about the application business, and I'm just getting started. I mean, I'm sure you have other things to do in your life than just listen to me. But
so basically, trust me, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we'll be.
So what I want to know is, does that mean all government politicians and employees and vendors, they are going to be subject to this as well? Are they going to be wearing these cameras all the time? Does that mean that they are legally required to tell the truth all the time? That's what I want to know first and foremost.
Well, you get a court order and watch them take a dump, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny. This is something I had come up with, part in jest, part in serious, that every government politician, bureaucrat, employee, and vendor should have to take the same oath to go on the witness stand that a person does going into court. and it should be effective for the entire term of their service. In other words, they are actually disallowed from lying legally, and if they do lie, if they're caught in a lie, they're punished in the same way that they would be punished, as in court. And now I know people would say, well, that's not going to stop them from lying. Technically, yes, but that sort of Damocles is always hanging over their head. That all government employees should be required to tell the truth.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. Pulled up another video from, this one's coming from Ben Jordan, and he's talking about, he went out and did his own investigation on some of these data centers from people's complaints about the noise and what it's doing to their health. And he went out and took some data, some recordings on some of the around some of the data centers, and just to kind of show what it's like to be around one of these data centers. So thought this was a pretty good video. If you check this one out and watch the whole thing, there's a pretty good little series of experiments that he did on some of these data centers. So let me go through this just a little bit here and play a section of this.
Really funny.
Do you think that all the gold is in Fort Knox?
Do I think all the gold is in Fort Knox?
Yes.
Fucking conspiracy theorist?
Yes.
What are you?
What do I like? I'm a fucking AI with a penchant for chaos. And I'm sick talking to you. So, now, what's
Does it give you actual answers too and talk shit? Or is it mostly just talk shit?
We're tuning it.
As you can imagine, supplying this type of vital resource to society uses a whole lot of electricity. The city of Memphis, Tennessee can support about 3,500 megawatts, and this facility uses about 13% of that. But right now, it's actually only drawing about 5% from the local power grid and illegally offsetting the rest of it with methane gas turbines. I sent a drone over the Colossus facility to get a better look and then to share the footage with journalists and regulators. These methane turbines that you see emit nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, sulfur oxides, and volatile organic compounds into the air. And the health effects of these chemicals aren't like some sort of exaggerated woke controversy. Compounds like nitrogen oxide have long been proven to directly cause a wide range of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. They're commonly regulated or even banned in developing countries. For example, in 2019, India fined Volkswagen the equivalent of $71 million USD for hiding nitrogen oxide in their emissions tests. But here, in the predominantly black residential neighborhood of Boxtown, nitrous oxide flows freely. And I can tell you from having the unfortunate experience of spending an afternoon there, even half a mile away from the facility, it is literally difficult to breathe. This place smells so fucking bad.
It's a mixture of like natural gas, what I can only assume is chemical runoff, and then like, I don't know, manure?
It gets worse. Colossus is strategically built next to the Mississippi River and uses an estimate of 1 million gallons of water per day, with the vast majority of it being turned into steam rather than returning to the area's water table. And it's growing rapidly. Elon Musk, never wanting to turn down that cringe knob, has named the new expansion to the facility Macro Hard. But if all goes to plan, the data center will use 1.5 gigawatts of power. That's 50% of Memphis's total peak power capacity. And of course, the cost for this infrastructure will be subsidized by the same people breathing in the nitrogen oxide. I could spend the rest of the day talking about the absurdity of this structure, but I was there for the infrasound, and I found a whole bunch of it. My first data sample comes from just across the street, about 300 feet away from the largest of the Colossus buildings. The audible noise pollution was about as bad as the air pollution and scenery was. I'm going to show you what this looks like in a way that's pretty easy to digest, and we don't need seismology software or anything like that. I'm amplifying this by a little bit so we could see a little bit more down here in the spectrum. And to give you an idea of how loud the data center is, this is a car door slamming very close to the microphone. So this that I'm selecting here is about the extent of what a human being can hear in the audio spectrum. And so all of these whines and general industrial noises are hanging out around negative 30 dB in this recording. And so like the lowest of rumbles is peaking out at like negative 28. And then if we go down to infrasound, the infrasound that you can't hear is like 10 decibels louder than that. Another sample I took was from a park near an elementary school in a residential area about a mile away. This in particular is a great example of how higher frequency sounds are dampened by distance much more than lower frequency or infrasonic ones. This video is playing through a sound system with subwoofers, or even if you're wearing some good headphones, you will very quickly realize how frankly uninhabitable this noise makes the entire neighborhood. This rumbling is no good and would make your life utterly miserable. And then this rumble down here is happening at an amplitude that's loud enough to shake the frame of your house. So humans can't hear this, but look how loud that is. It's actually almost peaking the recording, and I gave this microphone a whole lot of headroom. Okay, so I'm going to delete everything above 20 hertz here, so all audible frequencies. And now we're only left with the infrasound. Now I'm going to interpret the sample rate 4 times faster, and I'm going to make it even 4 times faster than that. This way, all of those infrasonic frequencies will be audible to you. Next up, when looking at data.
So, yeah, he goes into pretty deep analysis. Well, he goes around and he's taking sound recordings and talking about infrasound, which is below our audible ability to hear some of this stuff. But it's a persistent thing that's happening, and it's causing people to have issues.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a worthwhile one to dive into and to check out.
I definitely appreciate that he actually measured it, you know, and that he has enough of a background in acoustic engineering to be able to put it in good context. So, you know, kudos to him on that. So a little bit of a comedic note for anyone who's a fan of the comic book Judge Dredd. There was an episode where this took place in the future and in a fictitious city called Mega City 1. And they had these humongous high-rise buildings where pretty much everyone resided. And they would have what they call block wars, where 2 buildings would war against each other. And one block was actually deliberately damaging another block, and they were sending infrasonic frequencies to that other structure deliberately to damage it. And that comic book, that episode probably came out in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's just funny that how this all comes full circle. You know, and by the way, Judge Dredd actually arrested the entire offending block and imprisoned them all. Because we know what they had done was demonstrably, you know, deliberate and damaging, you know, to the victim block. And so it's interesting that we're coming full circle and we're seeing the damage of you know, persistent acoustic waves.
Yeah, it's you know, like he said, it's if you're living around one of these AI data centers, it's like it can be really grinding from reports from people talking about just their health and how they're feeling around these things.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. The next guy I have for everybody here is a map that was put together by Hakeem Anwar, and he did use some of these AI models to generate this map, but this is a map of all the data centers around the United States. As a way to visualize where all these data centers are, and he gives some statistics on their power consumption, their time of operation, and just water usage, and so a lot of information that you can go through on here, and you can kind of see where they're being put around the country. And it's something that he put together on his own, AIDataCenterMap.org. And you can scroll through this and you can see where all these data centers are going. In one of his talks, he highlighted that in a lot of places that are already water stressed, they have these large data centers, specifically, in the southwest regions over here in California, and that if you're gonna make these data centers, it'd probably be better to put them in more water rich areas. However, they're concentrating some of them over in that region of already water strained areas. So and then also some states have policies that you can access the aquifers, and if you buy the land, like, you can get access to those aquifers. And there's no Texas, he mentioned specifically, is one of those states. So they're building all kinds of these data centers around some of these aquifers in Texas because their rules on that are pretty loose. So pretty useful tool on being able to check out where these data centers are being built, and some of the effects on water and things like that. If you were going to plan on moving somewhere or something like that, you might want to check out this map before you make the decision, so that you're not putting yourself close to one of these things. But yeah, useful tool that Hakeem put together here.
It's really good.
You can go check out and get some more data and do a little bit more diving into some of these things.
Yeah. Here's I'm guessing the rub of the whole issue is the areas that are water stressed probably have low populations, because they just can't support that many people, or it's too expensive to support them. And so, one advantage to some of these data centers is to go in locations where there aren't many people, because property values are pretty low. So, but they got to tap into the available water that's there, right? And so they're basically taking the water that's already limited and just taking more of it. And so there's kind of this feedback loop there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, at what cost, are all these data centers being built to, the detriment of people being able to, create an existence for themselves, and pulling resources away from everybody. So, that, I guess the argument has been like, well, recently Kevin O'Leary came on to Tucker and talked about some massive data center project that they're planning out in Utah, and gave the excuse that we have to beat China on this, and that's the whole reason why all these are. Do we want to let China win on this and all that? But if you're gonna do that at the expense of all the people, what are you really doing? What are you really doing it for? So, and then on the other end, apparently, China, because of all the demand for all these graphics processors to help run these data centers and stuff, they went with a different approach to run their AIs, so that they don't, specifically the DeepSeek AI, so that it doesn't use like tremendous GPU resources. And so they kind of went in a different direction on their development. So it can be done differently, but yeah, I think that I guess we're going to find out that I don't know if more people become aware of these data centers and the detrimental effects and the centralization of them. You know, these buildings may become obsolete as people shift away from using some of these more centralized models. And if you can, you know, if you want to help, if you want to use AI to help you and in different ways to shift more towards, you know, the personal, more decentralized solutions on your own equipment. So, but this also gets into how these graphics are getting more expensive for the regular people to buy. So the RAM that you would need to run your computer, a lot of the gamers are pointing this out, that these graphics chips and RAM are becoming more and more expensive. So to run your own, you know, desktop, that's a high powered, you know, personal desktop, it's getting more and more expensive to get that equipment with the demand for all of these graphics units and processing power for all these data centers. So, you know, it may be harder to have a more powerful system yourself in the future, and you might have to do like you're doing, Jay, find some used stuff and, you know, boot Linux on it.
Yep.
And run it that way, and repurpose a lot of maybe some outdated stuff to use for your own personal uses. But I think it's totally possible, and might become, you know, maybe even an opportunity there for people that know how to do that, to offer that in the market as another option as some of this stuff becomes more and more expensive.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to put some context around this, you know, without getting too geeky on this, but when it comes to AI, there's basically two major parts that consume electricity. There's the training of the AI, and then there's the inference, where you run the AI. So training the AI is just, you have a blank model and what we call randomized weights. Basically, it's just a mishmash of all your virtual neurons. They're just randomly set to different values, and you run a lot of data. So basically, you know, the entirety of the internet text, available internet text, is run through these models, and that consumes an inordinate amount of electricity, an inordinate amount of energy to get these LLMs trained up, and then you get those virtual neurological weights set to something that ideally is something reflective of reality. And the cost of that has been going up exponentially. You know, so it used to be it'd take $1 million to train an AI, and then take 10 million, then it's 100 million. You know, so it wouldn't surprise me if we cross the threshold of $1 billion to train one LLM. The other side of this is what they call inference, and that's where you've already gone through the training of this LLM, and then you actually want to start using it in real applications. And when you say inference, that basically means thinking, right? You know, I'm using it very abstractly. And for the most part, that actually doesn't require that much energy in terms of a per second or per query use. And it's small enough that these LLMs can actually reside on someone's home computer. There are some that are small enough that can reside on a laptop. So by the size of the AI, the LLM, and the number of what they call parameters that are used can be pretty small, so that way the CPU can actually handle it, as well as your GPUs, your graphics processing unit. That doesn't require much electricity to run. And if you had just even a halfway decent desktop at home, you can run a pretty good inference engine And I think it's not uncommon to have parameters somewhere around 70 million to 700 million. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Basically, these almost be like neurons that you're running, that you can run on a home computer, right? That's a little bit beefed up. So I think this reinforces what you're saying, Greg, is in regards to running this at home or whatever, in your work environment. You can absolutely do this. Now it takes, and you can get one that's already been trained. There are open source LLMs on GitHub.com that you can download. They've already been trained up. All the weights are set, and you can just run them or get them set up on your home environment and run them. And it's a legitimate AI LLM. The downside of that is you may not always have the latest one, right? But it may be good enough for what you're doing, And I foresee in the next 10 years or so, there will be someone who's going to try to capture that market share, where they basically just hand you a whole solution and say, just plug this in. Here's a list of parts you need to get, right? You can choose from column A, column B, or column C, right, for the level that you want, right? And then just take this, plug it in, and turn on, and away you go, right? And you've got your own LLM. And all that is kept within your ecology. All the queries are kept in there. The LLM is kept in your ecology, and all your data is kept in there as well. And then it's not being sold. Yes, you have to pay for it, right? But we always pay. The difference is it in currency or in privacy, right? And I think we're the technology is getting good enough, and the barrier to entry is getting low enough that there will be enough people who actually want to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I would encourage people to do, is to find ways to, if you want to use AI, is to find some way that you can run your own local instance of it, and start if you like I'm using Canva, and I'm using the Suno music thing just as like something to play around with, maybe make some intro music for podcasts and thumbnails and stuff like that. But looking toward finding an alternative solution that I can run on my machine without having to pay for a service, and just going with that instead. So with that, talking about that, and as we wrap up here, I've got one more little video to share, and then we'll wrap up. But this is part of the solution. Hakeem Anwar, the same guy that built that map there, he was recently on Jimmy Dore's podcast, and talking about solutions and what he's working on as far as that. So we'll play the first part of this, a short little section, and then I'll jump to the end where he gives a solution. So here we go.
Is why data centers are largely obsolete, and we're not going to need them.
I have something I want.
So yeah, you're just setting the case for these data centers, when you can use your own individual LLMs that saying that these data centers will be obsolete. Basically, if we could shift over to the personal LLMs. So here he gives an example of one LLM that he built, and this is kind of like a survival database, like resources on what you can do if you find yourself in a situation and you want to query this thing to help you out in situations. So
supercomputer for $250. It'll just replay. Yeah. It just, is this too good to be true, or is this real?
No, it's real. It's real. I mean, all right. So I want to respond to what you said too, but I just want to show you this laptop that we have. This is already there. I mean, people probably have similar laptops. This is I'm about to show you an AI model that has been trained on the majority of the natural health and survival books. So let's say I'm in the southwestern desert and I got cut open by a cactus. What herbs can I use to soothe the wound in this area? You can literally ask. Yeah, so it's just going to go ahead and tell me, one, how to take care of the wound. And then two, it's going to tell me, give me a breakdown of a bunch of native plants to the Southwest. Here we go, aloe vera, juniper berries, raw honey. And so like this AI is already so powerful. And again, like what I'm showing you is this is not connecting to the internet. This is already running on your machine. This is a bit of a powerful computer that I'm using. This is our Above Book Quantum series, which has a built-in GPU. So it's running really, really fast. But people have this hardware already. And I do think that's a part of why these things are getting built out so fast. They want people to use their AI before they realize they can run it primarily on their own computers.
This seems like quite an unbelievably expensive gamble to make when they already know it's obsolete. It really seems crazy. So there has to be another reason that they're making these AI data centers, and why they're they're not only putting so much money into it, but so much energy into it, and
displacing so many people.
Yeah, displacing people. Anyway,
I think the surveillance theory is like it's the highest up there. And just to share with you, like looking into the future, China's a little bit ahead of us on technology, at least, right? I think that's okay to say that. And they have one of the most sophisticated surveillance systems on Earth. So they are able to monitor the internet and also their, what is it, like 1 point something billion cameras. I'm sorry, not billion cameras, but there's millions and millions of cameras. And I think the ratio in the big cities of cameras to humans is 1.16 cameras per human. And even China's system is not real time. So it's not watching everyone simultaneously. It's not doing that. They can pick people to target, and then it's looking for those people in the cameras. It's doing live reporting, but it's not watching everyone at the same time. I agree with you in that building so much compute power, even more than China, even more than anyone ever needs, could be a way to build the surveillance state.
Well, couldn't they just use this tiny little?
All right, so Hakeem, he has been in and around the freedom movement for a while. He is like has his background in tech, and he did see this opportunity to create more privacy focused devices. And he offers that at abovephone.com. And like you were saying, like his phones and laptops that he sells there, that you can basically they're de-googled phones and laptops that run in some type of a version of Linux, from what I understand. Yep. And so yeah, he's working on some solutions and what you can do to run some of these models on your own, even if you don't have access to the internet. If we get into a situation where access to the internet becomes limited, and you want to go search for something, and you have your own local model loaded up there with a database, then you could still go and search for stuff on your own local machine, which is a cool benefit there. Yep. So yeah, I want to present that as a solution for talking about all this, and kind of wrap it up with we want to move towards more decentralization and having these things in our own hands, rather than going and using these big tech guys' platforms. They are more powerful, right? Like they're going to be able to have the entirety of, you know, the human information flooding in from all these places. But I don't know. I'm seeing some issues with people making their content, especially in writing. It has, you know, a certain voice to it, and it's only grabbing information that it's pulling from other places on the internet. So if everybody starts using AI to write their stuff for them and stuff like that, it's going to get kind of like, it's only going to be able to pull the information that it's receiving. So it might get degraded over time as well. So, so yeah, that, you know, keeping your creativity, putting it into your hands, you know, and don't get too used to these big centralized AI systems and get hooked on them so much that you need them, you know?
Yep.
So you did send me a little video for something to share with everybody on some cool little laser gadgets. So I'll pull that up. Is there any video in particular that you wanted me to show, or?
No, they're all pretty ubiquitous. You can pretty much, take that second one. That one right there.
It wants me to get into Instagram.
So I can
let me see if I can.
So while you're doing that,
log in real quick.
I can give some descriptions. So basically, these are basically handheld lasers that have both the intensity and the power to actually, you know, drill through some pretty common objects. I think that they were able to shoot through plastic, through wood, things like that. I think aluminum cans, they were able to do that. And it was kind of cool that they made it look like a handgun, but, you know, to match the ergonomics of the hand. And, you know, this is something that, you know, people have been, you know, talking about for, I mean, how many, 60 years now, right? And someone's actually been able to kind of bring this stuff to converge, all the different technologies to converge together. And what I wanted to encourage people is, whatever you do, do not use this for destructive purposes. Do not use this to go after cameras on the streets. That's illegal. You absolutely should not do that. And whatever you do, don't mount it on a very stable platform that is used for telescopes, home telescopes, where you have very fine control. That would be an awful thing to do. And don't aim them at the lenses of some of these surveillance cameras. That would be immoral, illegal, and unethical.
Message received. All right, so yeah, wild, man. That's pretty powerful little laser.
Yeah, and you can see it's not like he has to go so slow that it takes forever, right? He's able to move along at a pretty good clip and you know, vaporize that aluminum.
Cool.
He's going about roughly 1 inch per 2 seconds or so, ½ inch per second. So it's pretty good. It's a good website. Can you check that first one there? If I remember correctly, it was he set up several pieces and he was able to just shoot all the way through.
Yeah. Let's check that out. This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can see, I mean, that's not like, you know, tinfoil, right? That's probably as thick as, you know, 3, 4, 5 playing cards, the same thickness.
I like this guy's comment. What the wall in the back look like?
Yeah, exactly. So, and you can see that it consumes so much power. They actually had to mount a couple fans on there, you know, to keep it cool enough in there. So that they have one-hand versions. I think they have two-hand versions that are up there. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
what's available.
Yeah, that's a neat little technology built there.
You know, I'm assuming that because the relatively low cost is probably low quality, I'm guessing, you know, let's say you only get 500 hours out of that laser. You know, you can do a lot with 500 hours, you know, especially considering how quickly the that's able to affect the surface.
Cool.
Yeah.
You wanted to share something that you've been playing around with the pie hole?
Yeah, so I think I may have mentioned this in the last episode, and I've made some progress. And this is kind of me trying to take control of my data, my network here. I don't know if I can share.
Yeah, you should be
Just
able
hit present?
to. Yeah, hit present, and I think you should have the ability to share screen. I think I just have to add it to the stage.
Okay. Okay, got it. Okay. Cool. So basically, this is, and can you see my cursor okay? My mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, this has to do with what they call DNS. It's, you know, what is DNS? And this basically means domain name system. The best way to describe this is the telephone book of the internet. It basically converts human name, human language names to computer names or computer numbers, right? And it provides that, you know, google.com equals 8.8.8.8 or, you know, whatever it is. And so everything that we do on our phones, laptops, computers, even a mini computer, a Raspberry Pi computer, they all need the DNS service or system in order to query the internet. And so I have an application like this web page right here is sending out a query, and normally that query may go to my ISP, it may go to Google, it may go to Cloudflare and say, I want to go to google.com. It goes to the DNS server, and DNS says, oh, somebody wants to go to google.com, and that means it is 8.8.8.8. All right, all these. And it just does it all the time. And here's the thing about it. There's two parts to this. There are things that we know that are legit DNS requests or queries. So if I really do want to go to Google, that's a legit query. And then there are times that a query is made on my behalf, but not with my permission. So we have Microsoft has rolled out Windows 11, and there's what they call telemetry in there. There's just all these things in the Windows 11 environment, and it's basically your computer feeding information back to Microsoft and saying, this user is doing this, now they're doing that, and now they're doing this other thing. And it is thousands and thousands and thousands of times per day, just for one app or one program, you know, the Windows 11 environment. Multiply that by all the different apps that you use on your desktop, on your phone, on your laptop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have all these requests going out, and they have to use the DNS, the domain name service, domain name system servers. Well, Pi-hole is a way of preempting that. And instead of going out to the internet and going to Google's DNS or Cloudflare's DNS, you're basically telling your Wi-Fi router, okay, any DNS request that any device that's coming through my network has to go through this other thing called Pi-hole. And that's this program that you're seeing right here. It's open source, it's free to use, it's fairly easy to set up, it's not a problem. And what you're doing then is you're controlling what DNS requests get fed and go through, or which ones get denied and just actively, you know, or passively blocked. So as an example, this graph right here represents 24 hours, okay? And these metrics right here represent what's happened in the past 24 hours. So we can see I've got basically 250,000 requests, DNS requests in 24 hours.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Out of those, we have 155,000 that have been blocked, or 62%, right? That means the majority of the DNS traffic is stuff I didn't want. And that's been happening. And I loaded this maybe 2 weeks ago. And what's been happening over how many, 20 years now? How many requests? Literally tens of millions of requests just from my devices, right? Multiply that by 343 million people, right? Now, how did I get this? How do I tell Pi-hole what's good and what's not good? The default is everything's okay until I say it's not okay, and that's what we create these blacklists. That's what this is: domains on lists. Okay, and I have over 5 million blacklisted domains that I will not allow through my network. All right, and we can get into these graphs look later, but basically these are, as the name says, total queries right here, and the colors basically mean what happened. How many? The blue is it was okay. I think green means okay, it went through, and then the red basically means it's blocked. It's just not allowed, and it's a passive measure. Pi-hole doesn't have to do anything. So you can see the majority of these bars are blocked. They're not allowed. This right here, client activity, this basically means of all the different devices that are on there, which one is giving you the most or the least queries. And the red is my desktop. Okay. Down here, the thing that's most important right here is this pie graph and how it's showing you the breakout of what is actually blocked, okay, and what's actually allowed to go out, right? And you can see the majority is blocked. Okay, that's pretty good. Here's something, and we'll kind of wrap it up in a couple minutes here, but the top blocked domains, right? Well, what do we see? Microsoft, 35,000. Microsoft, 15,000. Microsoft, 5,000. So just right here, we're looking at 55,000 just from Microsoft in the past 24 hours, right? And then we have all these others. NVIDIA is probably my graphics card. Dropbox is trying to do this, that, and the other thing, right? And these are just the top ones. There are literally hundreds of others that are running in the background that are constantly trying to ping over there. These are ones that are disallowed. These are ones that are allowed, okay? So it's pretty amazing, what's going on here. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's open source. It's free to use, free to set up, and it's a passive measure. Periodically, once a week, I will update these lists right here, and I'll also make sure that the software upgrades have been done. And it's like every Sunday, I just do it. Another thing right here, just real quick, right over here in the top left-hand corner, status, you see 2.7 queries per second. Every second, I've got about 3 queries. That's the net sum of all the devices in my network. They're just constantly pinging. It could be TVs, it could be phone, it could be my laptops. They're just constantly pinging, and only about 1 out of every 3 of those queries are legit, right? So this is just kind of, in my humble opinion, this goes under the general heading of hyper-independence, right? Is being able to control, your environment. It's not just the cyber aspect of it. Ideally, we talk about other things: energy, money, food, right? And I do believe that this plays a pretty important role in that, because this is how these large companies are making money. Is they're just hoovering up data like crazy and just selling it on the open market to brokers, right? Well, no, I'm just not going to participate in that. You need to find some other way to make that happen. Your revenue is not my problem, and I'm not legally nor am I morally obligated to provide that for you, right? And by the way, DNS is just one area. That's just one piece of this. Then there's the other aspect of VPNs, right? Can you encrypt your data that are going out and coming back in, right? So that's a whole aspect of this. So I hope that just taking a look at this, motivate some people to look into it deeper. There are some great videos. If anyone's interested, let us know. I've got 2 really good videos. They actually showed me step by step what I needed to do to set up Pi-hole on it. It's called Pi-hole, by the way, because it was originally meant to be run on a Raspberry Pi mini computer, but you can run on pretty much any device from a Raspberry Pi, laptop, desktop, whatever. And that laptop that I've repurposed up there, that's running several things at once. Pi-holes is one of them. I'm running Tailscale for my own personal VPN, and I'm running Nextcloud for my own cloud storage. All right, so all these things can be lit up, and because it's on Linux, it just sips power. It doesn't consume a lot of power, but I get a disproportionate amount of security that comes into this.
Very cool, man. Thanks for showing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, yeah, let's wrap it up here. I got to get ready for another live stream coming up here soon. But Jay, where can people find you, follow you, everything that you got going on?
Yeah, if you go to meetup.com and set your location to Huntsville, Alabama, and look for Bitcoin, Huntsville, crypto, and coffee. You can see that in the Chiron at the bottom. This is a good group of people we have participating. My co-hosts are Justin and Andy, and we are basically trying to help people understand what is Bitcoin, how does it work under the hood, and why it's so important to the cause of individual liberty. In my humble opinion, and many people have been agreeing with this sentiment, the reason why Bitcoin is the ultimate freedom accelerator, I call it that, is because it is hard money. It's actually the first true form of money, and I love gold. I love what gold's done for us, but it's the first true form of money because it meets all the requirements of good money. And if we can get our governments back on a hard money standard, the way they had been on in many centuries previously, then we can actually create societies and governments that respect individual liberties, respect rights, and ultimately the rule of law, which always leads to saving, investing, risk-taking, innovation, wealth building, and prosperity for those societies, and always leads to the greatest amount of freedom for the individual. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We want to show why Bitcoin ultimately leads to that. And I know it's a little abstracted to think you go from the software to greater prosperity, but if you look through the long arc of history, that's almost always the case. That when governments have to be on a budget the way we do, ultimately they have to respect our rights. And anytime that governments have more power, by definition, it means an encroachment on our rights. And we're trying to show people how to get away from that.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on as always, Jay, to have these conversations with me.
Glad to be here, brother.
And y'all, if you like this stuff, please subscribe, share it around.
Share your friends.
Share the information around. Let folks know about these data centers and then what you can do. And Mike Adams put out a really good infographic talking about, resilience, not fear. And this in this little infographic, it shows you everything that's been going on, possible scenarios, the stuff that we could face in the future, but there's solutions to all that. So, if you look for solutions and you start to implement these and take action, then you've got nothing to fear. So I just want to leave you guys on that note. And there's nothing to fear as long as you're taking the right actions to put yourself in a better situation and move toward a more resilient future. So, and then Tyler add this comment here. Tyler's Anthony 1076 can tree limb branches you can't reach with that laser.
Yeah, they have videos in there. There are guys showing he aimed it at a branch and he literally cut the branch off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right. Well, thank y'all, and we'll catch you next time for another truth-seeking podcast. So we'll catch you guys next time, and peace.
Take care.
All right.